Is all of you know that the history of the United States' relationship to Latin America has been, to say paternalistic would be an understatement. All right, the so-called Monroe Doctrine. You're all familiar with the Monroe Doctrine. And what it said is, it's a great doctrine if you're in the United States, which says the United States has the right to intervene in any country around the world, in Latin America. So back in the 1970s, the United States, Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, overthrew the democratically elected government of Salvador Allende because he was a threat to the corporate interest in this country. All right, overthrown governments in Brazil, overthrown governments in the Dominican Republic, supported terrible people in El Salvador, which resulted in God knows how many murders and deaths. So what we need is a foreign policy in which the United States respects the independence of countries in Latin America and in Mexico. We work together to improve the standard of living of all of our people. I voted against NAFTA, okay? And I did it not just to protect workers in the United States, but to protect family farmers in Mexico.
Does the mainstream media know this? Like, what Sanders is saying here is accurate and correct. Does the mainstream media know this? Meaning that this country has a history of knocking over governments in South America and take it as our discretion to do so, meaning at the discretion of the president. Oftentimes because he wants his hands on various resources throughout those countries. For example, in Bolivia right now, lithium, or you can even say gas. Or in Venezuela, oil in this case, or in Guatemala, where you had the United Fruit that wanted those the bananas from that country. But he is right. Honduras, even in the time frame that Hillary Clinton was in office. Does mainstream media not know this? And why can't they call a coup a coup? Sanders saying this is on point. Sanders has been the only candidate to bring up that what has taken place in Bolivia is a coup. And even though some people can take issue with him not being stronger on it, I give him credit for being able to say it at all. And even though I wanted him to be stronger in his condemnation of what the U.S. was doing in trying to topple Venezuela, at the very least, he said something about it. My point is, he is very close and understands the history of what has been taking place in South America and the U.S.'s role in the chaos that's been taking place in South America. And any immigration policy that you come up with has to deal with, we need to make South America whole. Otherwise, people, rational human beings, will leave where they are to come here. It is impossible to have a real immigration policy without dealing and attesting to that very basic point. Sanders, who's on the campaign trail, has been getting a bump recently. I mean, he's getting a surge. He bolted from the hospital bed. And in the various polls, even CNN had to own up to the fact that he seems to be getting a bump. He seems to be on fire. This has brought in Bloomberg and has brought in Patrick Duvall into the race. Nobody, at least none of the 99%, has been screaming for anybody else into the race. People, when you ask them, are you satisfied with the people who are in the race? They will say yes. And yet, you have a billionaire jumping in, believing he's trying to hold back the something. And you have Duvall getting into the race, again, believing he's there for something. They're not there for you. They're there because there are elements of the rich, the plutocratic class, and the Wall Street class that is terrified of either Sanders or Warren taking it. And I would more so put that it's Sanders. He's an existential threat to him. And so they're throwing all of these people into the race, believing that they can somehow stop him with somebody who the public, for the most part, doesn't want. I have evidence of that in a recent poll. Up to this point, these are the people who will be in the debates. Duvall, Patrick, or Bloomberg won't meet the funding or the other metrics for the November debates and probably won't meet them for the December debates. However, billionaires can throw their money around. Tom Steyer was able to essentially buy his way on the debate stage, so who knows? Bloomberg may be there. I'm doubtful. but it's possible. Up to this point, these are the candidates qualified for the November debates: Biden, Warren, Sanders, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Tom Steyer, and Cory Booker. Polling that has come out has shown Sanders to have gotten a bump. In California, the Hispanic community, Sanders, 31%, Biden, 22%, Warren, 11%, Julian Castro, 9%. That's funny and satisfying. If I'm not mistaken, Castro is not even going to be on the stage. Yeah, Castro is not even going to be on the stage. He's still in the race, however. Also going to that point, even in polls where Sanders is not number one, they show him making a surge. So in this poll, this is California. California is going to be a major state. Warren, 27%, loses 9. Sanders, 21%, up 5. He has been getting a significant bump. Buttigieg, up 8. Now, I would make the point that Warren's problem here is that Buttigieg is getting a bump. Both have this kind of upper white liberal voting base. You would think that Sanders and Warren's voting base are the same because Warren has been aping Sanders, but that's not entirely true. Their voting base has been somewhat different, even though some of the ideals would go over to Sanders. But that's not the case. Buttigieg has been eating into Warren's numbers. This is Georgia. Sanders, up 5 on Trump in Georgia. Trump, 43%. Biden, up 2, 46 to 44% in Georgia. Everyone else loses. But again, this is Georgia. Take it with a grain of salt. My only point here is that what you're seeing is Sanders going up in the polling, even in polling when he doesn't take the number 1 or number 2 spot, like if he's in third. It's him going up to be a third. Reuters came out today. National poll. I'm going to show you with Bloomberg in it and without Bloomberg. Now, without Bloomberg at this point is moot because Bloomberg is literally in the race. He believes that he is going to be able to get in at Arkansas and somehow take over the race. I think this is nonsense. But it's a billionaire's dream and he has money to waste. Bloomberg not in the race. With him out the race. But again, this poll doesn't matter because Bloomberg is in the race. Biden, 23%. Warren, 11%. Where's Sanders? Sanders, 18%. That's with him out the race. With Bloomberg in the race, which is the reality to which we inhabit, Bernie Sanders, 19%. Biden, 19%. Sanders is the number 1 spot, but so is Biden. Fair enough. But Sanders, number 1. Warren, 13%. Bloomberg, where are you, Bloomberg? 3%. Bloomberg comes in and takes 3%. Apparently, the 3% that Joe Biden was living on. Because if you remember, Joe Biden was at 23%. He literally is eating into Joe Biden. Now, what did I say? I say that there is no way this would hurt Sanders at all. Because my point was, anyone who votes for Bloomberg wouldn't be a Sanders supporter. In fact, same thing with, what's his name? With Deval Patrick. Anyone who votes for Sanders wouldn't necessarily vote for those people anyways. So for them jumping into the race doesn't in any way hurt Sanders. The only people it could potentially hurt is Warren or Biden. And in this case, it didn't hurt Warren, but it definitely ate into any lead that Joe Biden was having. Isn't that ironic? Ultimately, these people are in the race because they are terrified that Bernie Sanders would win the race. And them getting into the race, their very existence in the race, hurts the person that they didn't believe could carry the burden. Meaning, the only reason they will be jumping in is because they don't believe Joe Biden can carry the burden. They don't think he can carry the load and win the race. And that's even with Warren eating into Sanders' numbers. So what do? They throw all of these bodies into the race thinking, okay, this guy can carry the burden or that guy can carry the burden, missing the point that Joe Biden isn't going anywhere Because whatever they want to think of Joe Biden isn't running this as a team sport. Joe Biden wants to win. And so any person who they put into the race who can't legitimately parrot and pretend to be Sanders like Warren is will just hurt Joe Biden. And the evidence of that is here. National poll. By the way, 2% deviation. This poll is so good, there's only a 2% deviation. Meaning, this is supposedly relatively accurate. As opposed to some of the other polls with like a 4% gap or a 5% gap or something like that. It's 2%. It's a really good poll. Joe Biden, 19. Bernie Sanders, 19. Warren, not even close, 13. But the moment that you take, what's his name out, Bloomberg out, Biden pops up to 23%. We need to send a thank you letter to Bloomberg for getting in this race. He is eating into Joe Biden's numbers. He is eating into Biden's numbers. I love that. We need more billionaires to get into this race, right? So let's go to questions. So which candidate do you think is best on immigration? Biden, 19. Sanders, 15. Nobody else really applies. Now, Sanders has put out major plans. He's put out a major immigration plan calling for the dissolution of ICE. He's put out a major criminal justice plan, Medicare for All plan, climate plan, expansion of Social Security. Only thing he's been doing is putting out plans and toting those plans up. And when you get into issues of healthcare, who do you think is best on healthcare? Sanders, 25%. Nobody else is close, even among Republicans and even among independents. Like he blows everyone else away. Who do you think is best on environment? Bernie Sanders, even among Republicans, blows everyone else away. Who do you think is best on the economy? Now, Joe Biden takes this with 21%. But Sanders calls himself a democratic socialist, is right there beside him. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? Even among Republicans and among independents, they give it to Sanders. Who do you think is most likely to beat Trump? Biden, 32% across the board, even among Republicans. Isn't that fascinating? Now, my argument has been that the electability thing drags every other number to the side. I still believe that. When you look at the person and they say, who's more electable? And they say, Joe Biden is our safe bet. That's our guy. I strongly believe that every other number that's in the polling gets dragged to the side because of that number. And the moment that you chip away at this, the other numbers go up. Meaning, if Sanders can eat into this number of electability, I strongly put to you that the polling of Sanders and Biden tying for first will start to deviate that much more. Electability matters. For a lot of these people, is who keeps the monsters at bay. And they are willing to settle. They're willing to settle if it keeps the monsters at bay. Because Joe Biden, if you remember, if you think about the stuff that he's been saying, him and his wife came out with a speech and says, look, you may not like my husband's policies, but he can beat Trump. Paid for by Joe Biden. For all intents and purposes, that was the video. They are running on this notion of electability. Electability is a fickle mistress, and it entirely depends on what people think. The moment that people change their minds on, well, I think this guy is also just as much electable, and he has visionary policies, that electability number starts to fizzle. This video is not meant to be long, but this is a Reuters poll. I put the poll at the bottom so you guys can see for yourself. This is a Main Street, straight arrow, Reuters poll. 2,235 adults with a deviation. The poll also has credibility interval of 3.6. Wait a minute, I saw 2 point. Here we are. The precision of the ISPO's online poll is measured with a credibility interval. In this case, the poll is accurate within a plus 2.4 percentage. 19 times out of 20. The credibility interval will be sources of error, including but not limited to coverage error and measurement error. The poll also has a credibility interval of 3.6 percentage point for Democrats, 3.8 for Republicans, and 7.1 for independents. Jesus fucking Christ. The only part I'm using in this that I care about are the Democrats. So, but I don't know the difference between, well, in this case, I guess we're looking at this. The poll is accurate within plus 2.4. All right, I'll take it. Good job, Sanders. Good job. Marcus Will. They want a 12-person debate to keep the anti-war voice crowded out. Who is the anti-war voice? Is it Bernie? Well, there are two, right? And anti-war is a little strong. There is no anti-war voice on the stage. There are. Tulsi Gabbard would be the anti-interventionist voice. And I would imagine Sanders, who's been pushing bills to try to get us out of Yemen and Syria. But here's the catch. My reasoning for wanting Tulsi Gabbard on the debate stage was to push Sanders to the left. Like, I want somebody to be able to push him on this issue. Now, Tulsi has never attacked Sanders, which I appreciate. And again, I also appreciate her being there to push him. I want her to push him on the left because I think he would benefit from being pushed in those ways, even though he has come out saying, trying to push the President's War Powers Act and those type of things. But I don't think Tulsi Gabbard is anti-war. I don't even think she describes herself as anti-war. I think if anything, she says she's anti-interventionist wars. All right. I'll end this here. Like, share, subscribe. Oh, and by the way, also somebody said Lula. Yeah, Sanders has gained from what? A Lula endorsement, an AOC endorsement, Ilhan Omar, Rashid Tlaib endorsement. Not to mention the nurses union. He has been doing awesome. So let's hope that momentum keep going, and let's hope Sanders continues to kick ass. But as is, Reuters, Sanders, Biden, tied for the #1 spot in the nation. By the way, national polls don't mean much, only in the sense of what is the perspective of the nation at a particular time. These elections are won through the various states. So always take national polls with a grain of salt. However, the surge continues. Thanks all. Like, share, subscribe.